Redline logbook here for Hestia Familia Part 14. Where we left off, the entire Hestia group survived the Antisphena and the horrors of the lower floors, and are now on their way to get Belle and Ryu, who are on the deep floors. Before I get started, I would like to say that I'm going to skip all the stuff involving Ryu and her familia, because I'm going to say that for the Estrella Familia videos. First thing Belle thinks to himself while inside the deep floors is he remembers what Eyes told him about it. It's scary in a way that you can't understand unless you're there. It's this eerie darkness that creeps everywhere, where you just hear endless moans of monsters. You really feel like you're in hell, not just the dungeon. Belle starts to hear the roar of the Juggernaut from the lantern's hole coming towards him. His body is broken, his arm that with the Goliath scarf is completely shattered, and he has an unconscious Ryu. And so the only thought to him is, should I now run away or fight the Juggernaut? He's completely unsure what the right decision should be, and the darkness of the deep floors are suffocating him at this point. This has always been a weakness for Belle. Because he's leveled up so fast, he's never really gained any real experience that a normal adventurer would, and so his decision-making has always been flawed. And now that he's in this situation in the deep floors, his decision-making isn't just flawed, it's completely broken down. Before he's able to make up his mind, the Juggernaut appears. At that moment, that's when Belle's mind finally clears a bit, and he realizes he has no chance fighting that thing, and tries to run away with Ryu. The Juggernaut is slowed down because it's missing an arm, but it starts to catch up, and Belle's only course of action is to blast the surrounding area with fireballs, causing a cave-in. This allows a separation between them and the Juggernaut. Ryu finally gains consciousness, and when she realizes they're in the deep floors, she's basically without any hope. She realizes that without her leg, she's basically helpless and she can't do anything for herself, and she's just going to weigh down Belle, and so she's just trying to convince him to abandon her and try to survive on his own until he's able to escape. Belle, of course, refuses this, and the two begin to argue over who should get healed. Ryu wants to heal Belle, and Belle wants to heal Ryu's leg. That's when a skull sheep appears. This is the most terrifying monster Belle's ever fought at this point, because the way it fights is that you actually hear it before you see it. They like to rattle their skulls, causing this weird echoing sound as it approaches. And when it does approach, all you see is the head. You don't see the body, because it's covered by this cloth, but it's actually not cloth, it's the skin. And it actually uses this skin to camouflage with the walls of the White Palace. And so the monster is able to ambush Belle quite easily, even though he's on alert. It fires its bone spears at Belle as a way to get him off balance so it then strike, and then it actively tries to rip Belle apart, while Belle is consistently stabbing at it until eventually he's able to stab its magic stone and killing it. At the end of it, Belle is currently bleeding even more than he already was, and worse than that, he's completely exhausted. Ryu and Belle decide to finish their argument about abandoning her. She's even more convinced that she's dead weight, but Belle's able to convince her that he needs her. He only survived the battle with the Skull Sheep because she told him about the camouflage and warned him about the bone spears that were about to come at him. He'd already be dead without her, and she knows more about the deep floors that he knows nothing about, and if she can share that knowledge, it would be easier for both of them to survive. She can't argue with this, and apologizes about trying to throw her own life away, and decides that they are going to work together. She tells Belle to find them a small room, so this way the two of them can rest. As they get closer to one of these rooms, they see a light. Belle then feels the first bit of hope he's had in a while, because he recognizes it as the light of a magic stone lantern, which means these have to be adventurers. Ryu has a very saddened look on her face, because she knows the truth. They continue to walk as Belle asks for help, but when they get to the room, it's just 3 corpses, and worse than that, it's 3 skeletons, which means these people have been here for a long time. Despair is having hope and then realizing that hope was a lie. That's basically the best emotion I can describe what Belle is feeling right now. Then 3 skull sheep appear and start to charge them. Belle freaks out and just unloads his fire bolt on them. He isn't even aiming, he actually smashes apart the room partially as he's trying to blast the skull sheep. The monsters in the deep pool are actually quite intelligent, and so they realize at that moment that they're gonna die, so they actually take off. They have the patience to wait for their prey to get weak. A combination of mind down and the despair starts to get to Belle, and he actually starts to break down mentally. Ryu snaps him out of it and basically starts to explain to him that their circumstances haven't changed. Yes, they found 3 dead adventurers, and while he was hoping that this would make the situation better, it didn't, but it also didn't make the situation worse. They're still in the same boat. They still have a chance to survive. Ryu tells him, well, now that we have the room, this is our chance to get the rest we need. He tells him that he'll sleep in a 5-minute shift, because that's the best thing they can do in a situation like this. He sleeps first, and she'll guard him, and then afterwards it'll be her turn. They don't have to worry about smashing all the walls because his firebolt did that for them, so no new monster's going to spawn in this room until repairs. That's a lie. There's nowhere near enough damage. But she realizes Belle's about to collapse her mind down anyway, so he doesn't actually have the strength to smash the walls, so that was just a lie to get him to calm down. So as Belle slept, Ryu sat in the dark, praying no monsters show up within that 5 minutes. Unfortunately for her, 2 sheep heads end up showing up. Now the anime shows her doing a little bit of movement while fighting. That didn't happen. Her leg is, at this point, not healed enough for her to do anything. All she could do was sit still and throw her 2 short swords, and she successfully killed both of the sheep heads by doing that. The only problem is a 3rd sheep head then came out of the shadows, but she was out of swords. It charged at her as she screamed "stay away," and right before it ended up getting her, Belle woke up and killed it with his knife. And all Belle says is, that was 5 minutes. Ryu was surprised that his internal clock worked so well, and questioned if he trained sleeping, which he did. Belle remembers doing sleep training with Eyes, and he's actually very grateful for Eyes teaching him this, and is actually sorry that he even doubted her, thinking that she was just sleepy. Another skull sheep ended up showing up when Belle was the one on watch, but unlike before, where they took advantage of the fact that Ryu was crippled, this one was smart to realize that Belle was ready to fight. Belle even threatened it with his magic by charging a little in his hand so the monster could sense it, and once again, deep floor monsters are actually quite intelligent. It realized that if it went in, it's gonna die. So it bailed. After Ryu wakes up, she stores up enough mine to now heal one of them. She wants to heal Belle's arm, but he wants to heal her leg so she can walk around. They decide, fine, let's look at my arm and see how bad it is. Now, unlike in the anime, in the light novel, Belle covered his entire arm and hand with the Goliath cloth. He did this because if he slipped up even a little while fighting Juggernaut, they could have had his fingers or his entire hand cut off from the wrist. So obviously he covered the entire thing. So while in the deep floors, Belle has no access to his left hand, period. And when they uncover a little bit of his arm from the Goliath cloth, Ryu says, "I'm sorry." The reason why she says that is because it's not just that she can't heal it. The bones and the meat are so smashed up, she sees no way of him ever being able to heal this arm. She assumes, and so does Belle when he sees it, that he's going to have to get a metallic one when they reach the surface. And so Ryu goes ahead and heals her own leg. Now her healing magic isn't the strongest, and also she doesn't have a lot of mind left, so what she can do is really set the leg. She can't really heal it properly. So Belle is stuck having to do the majority of the fighting going forward. But this helps Belle out because now she can walk on her own going forward. The two of them then have a discussion about their situation. They're obviously in the White Palace, they have no supplies, they're heavily injured, and worst of all, Ryu doesn't recognize the area that they're in, which means they're not in the normal route. So if there is any adventurers that just happen to be in the lower floors, they're never going to cross paths with them, ever. Even if Belle's friends come looking for them in the White Palace, once again, this is off the beaten path, so they will not be found. If they want to get out of this, they have to do it themselves. Ryu decides that they're going to go up to the lower floors. 2 major reasons. 1, the next safety point in the deep floors is down 2 floors. There are no holes like in the middle floors where you can just jump from floor to floor. You would have to get to the exit of each floor, so the journey would be much longer and much deadlier. Second, the lower floors actually have food and water. Ryu then decides that they need more supplies, whatever they can get their hands on, and she orders Belle to then start searching the corpses. Belle, of course, is completely against this because when it comes to adventure policy, that's considered desecration. What you're supposed to do when you find a corpse in the dungeon is pack everything up and then take it back to the surface so they can receive a proper burial. But Ryu isn't hearing it. She demands Belle search the men and she'll search the woman. They need this to survive. Belle hesitates, but when he sees Ryu shaking as she's doing this, he realizes that she is also disgusted by these actions. And Belle's able to empathize with Ryu that this isn't something that she wants to do. She's doing it so they can survive. And so he also begins searching the bodies. As you can imagine, Belle is constantly apologizing to the corpses as he's pillaging them, and even admits to himself that these words are basically empty because he's doing it anyway, as he's apologizing. But he wants to survive and save Ryu. They get their hands on lots of useful items, but the most important one is a map of the area that the dead adventurers were making before their death. They even X'd out areas that were dead ends and other things. And so the plan is basically to use this map to speed run through all this so they can get to the normal path. Because once they get there, Ryu knows the way back. They discover that the map was actually written on the back of the familia emblem. They also wrote down messages to their god, to their family, to their mothers, basically apologizing for not coming back. Belle then asked Ryu if they could take this emblem back to the surface to give some closure to the people who left behind. During this desperate time, Ryu actually becomes Belle's teacher, just like Eyes was. Well, Eyes taught him the basics and then also how to fight a human, Ryu teaches him the quickest way to win a fight. They're hurt and low on energy, so if he drags out a fight too much, they're going to end up dead. She teaches him patience, dodge, attack. Instead of rushing in like he normally does, he allows the monster to attack him first, and then he counters, stabs it in its magic stone, killing it. This 2-move step allows him to conserve as much energy as possible. She also teaches him how to feint even better than Eyes taught him. And if the number of monsters is just too great, they have an emergency plan. Bell will fall back to Ryu, she will then throw a blaze stone, and then Bell will blast it with his firebolt, killing all the monsters. Unfortunately, they only have a total of 5. Bell is actively being hard on himself about the fact he can't do enough to help them get out of this, but Ryu points out that any other adventurer would have given up at this point. This is the first time he's ever been in the deep floors. Not just that, but he's also injured and exhausted. And he's doing everything that Ryu asked of him, even if it's unreasonable. So the fact that he has the mental fortitude to keep going, to keep doing this, proves that he has what it takes to survive right now, and that he's actually doing really well. And he should be proud the fact that he's keeping the two of them alive. This heart-to-heart really helps Bell out a lot, proving once again that having Ryu with him was the right choice, and that Ryu was being unreasonable before. Because Ryu is constantly using her magic to heal her leg as much as possible, Bell is forced to consume old moldy potions. Bell obviously doesn't want to do this, but then Ryu points out that he's a level 4, which means he has to have an immunity ability, which means eating a little bit of mold isn't going to kill him, or even make him sick. Without any more excuses, Bell is forced to drink the disgusting potion. They come in contact with a Paluda, which is a dragon monster. While it doesn't have wings, it does have the ability to breathe fire, and its back is covered in poisonous quills that it can fire from it. Because they have no antidote for the poison, if they get hit by any of those, they're dead. So their plan of action of dealing with it is to sneak past it as quietly as possible. Ryu continues to teach Bell all that she knows, including that there are monsters called oozes, and the blue ones, if you boil them, you can drink them. A good replacement for water. It's completely disgusting though. Bell describes it as drinking snot. He's forced to drink about half the ooze before he hands the rest to Ryu, and right before she starts to drink it, he then apologizes for putting his mouth on the container first, and then Ryu puts it away. Bell assumes she put it away because she doesn't want to drink something that disgusting. Obviously, she doesn't want to do an indirect kiss. They eventually are able to stumble upon one of the rings. Now, the way the rings are is that they're all white, but they're a different hue of white. The third ring, the one they're looking at, is chalk white. Plus, from what they can see, it's curving inward, which means they have just confirmed that they're in the area between wall 2 and 3. Bell is becoming more and more hopeful, believing that the two of them are going to escape together. Still hasn't realized that's just not Ryu's plan. She doesn't believe that both of them can make it out of there alive, and so she's decided she's going to sacrifice her own life to save Bell. She doesn't know when it's going to happen, but she knows some point in the deep floors, there's going to have to be a choice made, and she is going to make that choice. And so she's going to continue to share as much information that she can with him before she has to die, so Bell can make it, even if he doesn't have her anymore. And what she can see is that her plan is working. Bell is learning at a rapid rate. In fact, Bell is able to combine what he learns from Ryu and Eyes and form it into a better style of fighting. He actually uses the terrain around him and even the monsters themselves as weapons. For example, he uses the stairs to knock down one monster into a bunch of others. He tricks the monsters into killing each other instead of focusing on all the fighting himself. He's actually becoming a proper adventurer. Surviving the deep floors is probably the best training Bell has ever received. What he learns here will be stuff that will stick with him for the rest of his life. Throughout their fighting and wandering, the two of them are constantly going on breaks, just sitting there and resting, or taking 5-minute naps at a time. During one of these breaks, Ryu finally tells Bell the name of the Juggernaut. She explains that a mage, which was Fels, appeared to her after she was done going on her revenge spree, and asked her to keep everything confidential that she knows about the Juggernaut to herself. In exchange, the guild will not go after her. Bell then asks Ryu about what happened to her familia. He wants to know the full story, and Ryu's response is to ignore him. We get another thought of the Juggernaut during this time period, and we learn that it hates Bell, even more than before. When Bell attacked the Juggernaut with the Argo Vesta, it retreated backward. It ran away. And this is a humiliation the Juggernaut cannot handle. The Juggernaut sees itself as the predator, and everything else is prey. So when it ran away from prey, this was true unending humiliation for the Juggernaut. Dying is one thing. Running away is unforgivable. So its sole desire right now now is to kill Bell. And they end up getting surrounded by an army of Spartoids. They're skeletons with the highest level of combat ability. They like to fight with swords and shields. As a result of this, they have a tendency to fight on the defensive, forcing you to burn through all your energy before they scare you alive. While they're trying to hold off the Spartoids, other monsters start to show up. And these guys don't stay on the defensive, they go on the offensive. So now they have an army of Spartoids stopping them from escaping, while a bunch of other monsters try to rip them apart. Then things get both better and worse, because Faluda starts showing up, and they start firing their poisonous needles everywhere, even killing the other monsters and Spartoids. And then when they're done doing that, they then decide to burn everything with their fire. Bell and Ryu use the chaos to get out of the way and preventing themselves from getting killed. They then blow up the Paludas with one of their blaze rocks. But then a fourth Paluda shows up and fires its needle into Bell's shoulder. Ryu quickly kills it, but now Bell has been poisoned. Without any antidote, Ryu basically starts to lose it. She basically believes that this is the end of Bell, and everything she worked so hard to do is now just gone out the window. The one person that she needed to survive is now going to die. That's when Bell removes the needle from his shoulder and then stabs himself with his knife, the unicorn horn knife. And the great thing about unicorn horn is that it's a purifier. Bell then gives all the thanks he can to Welf for just saving his life. Ryu gives Bell the last potion they have and orders him to rest for 5 more minutes. Realizing their supplies are basically about to run out, she begins to ask why did the adventurers who were poisoned and were in a desperate spot because of that decided to turn around instead of heading forward. Why choose of dying of poison instead of heading down this route? What is down there that made them turn back? She decides they need to go that way to understand the situation. While traveling down this path, Ryu begins to recognize the terrain and tells Bell she knows exactly where they're at, and if they keep going, they'll find the normal route. This gets Bell all excited, but Ryu is even more depressed, because to get to the normal route, you have to go through the Colosseum. The Colosseum is one of the great mysteries of the dungeon, because it appeared roughly 50 years ago, and it defies all logic of the dungeon. 1. As soon as something dies inside the dungeon, it immediately spawns again. That's not how the dungeon operates. It should take time for a monster to respawn. And 2. All the monsters are constantly killing each other. If they're part of the same race, they work together, but if they're another species, they slaughter one another. This doesn't make any sense. Monsters don't normally do this. Unless they're an irregular who's craving magic stones, monsters usually don't focus on killing other monsters. The Colosseum is a mystery that the guild still does not understand. Ryu explains the situation they're in. The only way to get back to the normal route is to cross the Colosseum. And the worst part is, of the 4 exits of the Colosseum, the one that leads to the normal route is the furthest from them. Bell, of course, has his doubts that they could even do that, but then Ryu explains that they're going to use the item drops they've collected. They're going to use the Skull Sheep's cloak as camouflage, like it does, and they're going to hide their scent with the heart of a barbarian by smearing it all over themselves. Bell is extremely impressed by Ryu, her ability to stay calm in a situation like this and think of a rational decision that will allow them to escape their lives. He really begins to flatter her at this point, and he says once again that if he was on his own, he'd die. But the problem is, Ryu's plan is to die here, so she needs him to have the confidence to survive on his own after this. She tells him to take the knowledge that he's learned and turn it into wisdom, and she starts to prepare him for her death, even though he doesn't know. She asks Bell, does he remember the normal route's routine, and he gives a detailed explanation of what she taught him, and then she starts giving Bell some of the items that they were using to survive. Bell actually questions why he needs to carry them, but she comes up with a lie saying that in a situation like this, maybe you'll need it. It's best that we split them evenly. But in truth, she's just trying to give him everything he needs to survive on his own. When they get inside the Colosseum, it is complete madness. Monsters slaughtering one another, and they just have to calmly walk through it all. Unlike the anime, in the light novel, they're crawling on the ground and making sure to lean heavily against the wall, because they're not trying to disguise themselves as a sheep head, because the other monsters would attack it. They're all fighting each other. No, they're trying to disguise themselves as the dungeon wall. It's camouflage. That's the point of the sheep head skin. It blends in with the milky white walls. Unfortunately, right then and there, a Spartoid spawned right underneath them. It attacked Bell, he kills it, but this revealed their position to all the other monsters. They stopped killing each other and went straight for Bell and Ryu. There are so many monsters, they're forced to use Bell's magic and whatever items they have left. But it doesn't matter because of the infinite respawn. No matter how many they kill, they just get more and more. They eventually fight their way to the bridge, but unfortunately the monsters in the Colosseum are now following them out. At the same exact time, the fighting in the Colosseum attracted monsters from the outside, and now they're coming in. Ryu then starts her plan. She orders Bell to run across the bridge. She orders him to quickly finish off the monsters that are coming in, while she holds off the ones in the Colosseum. Ryu gets her magic ready, and then while Bell is in the middle of fighting the monsters on the bridge, he realizes that there's no stopping the monsters from leaving the Colosseum. And he finally puts two to two together on what Ryu is planning. He tries running to her to stop her, but she uses one of her luminous winds to carry him well past all the monsters on the bridge, and then uses the rest to annihilate the bridge. Belle questions why she's doing this, why she's giving up her life, but her only response is that he should just go. She then turns back into the Colosseum and continues to fight the monsters. As her weapons begin to break, the monsters begin to overwhelm her, and the only thought going through her mind is, she's okay with dying. As long as Belle is alive, as long as he's safe, as long as he gets back to the surface, her life, her elven pride, everything. All that matters is Belle. She does have one regret, and that's the fact that after everything she went through, she was then taken in by the hostess of fertility, and now she's abandoning them. Belle then rushes in, jumps straight down to her position, killing all the monsters around her, and then immediately throws a blaze stone that he had. With a 4-minute full charge Argonaut, tosses it, and then blasts it with Firebolt. This explosion is so powerful, it demolishes the Colosseum. The floor of the Colosseum collapses into a secret tunnel underneath it. Belle drags Ryu out of the rubble, wakes her up, and starts to carry her through the tunnel. And this is where Belle learns that she wasn't just trying to die for him, she was trying to die because she wants to. Ryu feels nothing but guilt for what happened to her familia. She's been holding on to it this entire time, and she's at the breaking point. She wants to die. From the beginning, she wanted to die with her friends, and the guilt is just overwhelming. Belle, of course, refuses, because Belle isn't going to let anyone die. Ryu continues to argue that she is unworthy of living, that she is a criminal who went on a revenge spree, she massacred people, she did all of these horrible things. She was even so awful that her goddess disowned her. She's unworthy of justice. Belle completely rejects this notion, telling her that she's his hero. She saved him, she saved his friends countless times. She even saved people on the 18th floor during the Black Goliath incident. In his eyes, she is the embodiment of justice. And no matter what anyone says, even her, he will never believe otherwise. And so his justice is getting the both of them out of there, back home, together. Ryu, almost on the verge of tears at this point, begins to think to herself, maybe the two of them can go home together. That is when a barbarian who survived the collapse of the Colosseum backhands Belle against a wall. Belle's entire body goes limp and unconscious, and the barbarian slowly moves towards him. Ryu then starts to scream at him, begging him to wake up, because she's unable to move now as well. She continues to get louder and louder, screaming for him just to wake up. She sees that he's about to die as the barbarian picks his body up and is about to bite his head clean off. Belle's eyes then open, and he stabs the barbarian clear through the magic stone, killing it. He was pretending to be unconscious the whole time to lure the barbarian in, and he apologizes to Ryu for doing that to her. She's completely embarrassed by the fact that she was so desperately calling out his name, and so she then asks him to never do that to her again. The two continue down the tunnel until they get to a river, which is unheard of. There shouldn't be any water source on this floor, which means they just discovered new terrain in the dungeon. The two of them lie into the water for a second to clean off the blood and also to drink fresh water in a long time, because they've been sustaining off of oozes this whole time. And for the first time since they were in the deep floors, the two of them can have a proper rest. So, being soaked down to the bone because of the river, the two of them create a fire, strip almost completely naked, and then have an argument about who should be wearing the dry jacket, keep warm. Finally, in this moment, Ryu has the resolve to tell Belle what happened to the Estrella Familia. His only response is, she clearly loved them, and they clearly wanted Ryu to survive. And now he has an even greater reason to make sure Ryu makes it back. Yeah, so this is where Ryu's feelings really kind of take over her, and she decides that they should share body heat to survive. I don't think they actually need it at this point. I'm pretty sure Ryu, subconsciously, is just trying to take advantage of the situation and hug a half-naked Belle while she's, naked. So the two sit in front of the fire, huddled together, having their heart-to-heart. It's a very romantic scene, but it's destined to fail because Belle is in love with eyes. So after a few hours, the two decide it's time to go. Ryu does one last heal on her leg. She's able to move pretty well now. Unfortunately, the bone is miscentered, which means once they get back to the surface, it has to be rebroken, straightened out, and then healed properly. All of Belle's wounds seem to be gone. They were all healed by Ryu, so they were there for a while. And most of his stamina is basically back, so he's doing pretty well. The only issue is that his arm is still destroyed, and Ryu cannot heal that. Eventually, they reach the end of the tunnel. It's a dead end, but Belle notices there are a bunch of crystals on the wall. Crystals that are similar to the ones that the Xenos use to hide their homes. He smashes through it, and now they have an exit. Now they're in the proper dungeon. They should be having to fight monsters, but no matter how far they walk, none appear. Not just that, but they don't even hear any monsters. There's an eerie silence in the air, They keep walking and they get to an ashen wall, which means that is the 4th ring. Not just that, but they can see the exit, which means they're now on the normal route. All they have to do is just keep going, and they're free. They can finally see the exit to the 36th floor. Unfortunately, it's on the other side of the room. And waiting for them, right at the exit, is the Juggernaut. And the Juggernaut is fully healed. It went around the deep floors, devouring all the monsters it could, and then turned those devoured monsters into its body parts. That is not possible for any other monster. The fact that Juggernaut did this is completely unheard of. Good news, the Juggernaut is somewhat slower than it was before. Bad news, it now has a bunch of new abilities, like firing Skull Sheep Spike. The Juggernaut copies the move from Udeus, the floor boss, and launches spikes from the ground. One of them actually penetrates through Bell's side. He starts to lose blood quickly, but then uses a small firebolt to cauterize the wound. Ryu grabs Bell and carries him into a hole too small for the Juggernaut to fit through. Once again tries to use its spike attack through the ground, but Ryu is able to outrun it. They're now officially out of range of its attack, but they have nowhere to go. If they want to escape, they're going to have to fight the Juggernaut. Ryu at this point has lost all hope. Bell is near death. She's near death. They can't fight the Juggernaut. Bell regains consciousness, and Ryu basically starts talking like it's over. She asks Bell to hold her, and he does, until she passes out. But Bell hasn't given up hope. Bell stands back up and decides he's going to protect Ryu. He's going to slay the Juggernaut. While I want to discuss what Ryu's dream is and what she goes through in this moment, once again, I will save that for the Hestia Familia video. But I will say, during this dream, Ryu makes her decision, and she's now ready to fight alongside Bell to beat the Juggernaut. Ryu then starts chanting her spell. She only has one shot at this. Bell knows that, and so he decides to play cover for her. He ignites Argo Vesta again. Once again, the Juggernaut kinda mad and humiliated from before, so this time it doesn't even try to take on Argo Vesta. It just launches its spikes into the ground, impaling Bell again. Bell then stabs Argo Vesta into the ground, not just blowing up all the spikes, but the tendril it was using to launch the spikes underground. Bell falls to the ground because he's just been impaled 3 times, 2 through the stomach and once through the leg. And once again, Juggernaut really hates Bell, and it takes the advantage to try to attack him, but Ryu blocks it. Bell then shoves his hand into the Juggernaut's stomach and firebolts the thing. Ryu releases her luminous wind attack, but the Juggernaut, sacrificing its leg that just got blown off, it is able to dodge the attack. But Ryu knew it was going to dodge, and so she saved 10 of her largest orbs of wind. Each time she uses one of these orbs, she names one of her dead friends. She either uses them to propel herself at high speeds, dodge the spikes that the Juggernaut's throwing, or attack the Juggernaut. And of course, she uses the last orb, the one for her best friend Elise, to kill the Juggernaut. The two of them then collapse completely out of both mind and, running low on blood, slowly pass out as they hear the roars of monsters getting close to them. Fortunately for them, the monsters that they heard coming were the Xenos. Bell is able to recognize Vine right before he passes out, and the Xenos inform Lily's group where Bell is. They scatter right before they get there, so they can keep their cover. And so the rescue mission is finally over. Bell is the first to regain consciousness. He's getting treatment from the Silver Saint. He's got a new cast on his arm. And while he's actually getting it adjusted properly, Ryu then barges in looking for him. She's still wearing her hospital gown, and it's actually falling off. And as it falls off, Lily and Hestia decide to hit Bell so he doesn't see anything. As you can imagine, the Silver Saint did not like that, and she basically kicked everyone out except for Hestia because she's a goddess, can't kick her out. They learned 2 major things. One, they were in the deep floors for 4 days. 4 days they were forced to survive in that hell. And the other thing, Gale Wind is reported dead. To pay back his favor, Boris went out of his way to declare that Gale Wind died protecting them from the Rudra familia, who caused a calamity that killed so many people. Boris controls Auraria, so this is going to keep the people in the dungeon's mouths shut. And Uranus doesn't want anyone to know about the Juggernaut, so he'll also make sure everyone keeps their mouth shut. Bell and Ryu get released from the hospital, and the two decide to spend the day together, just strolling around Aurario, enjoying the sun together. He tells her that he gets to keep his arm, because while they weren't able to heal it, they were able to rebuild it piece by piece using the flesh and bone that was still left. Ryu takes him to a spot that her and Elise like to spend time at to look over the city, and she thanks him, not for saving her life, but for believing in her, and for helping her find her justice again. Him being able to find value in her, and then making her realize that value, was the thing that she needed most in this world. He then compliments her smile, calls it beautiful. She then gets super flustered and embarrassed, and runs away. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, give a thumbs up so you can enjoy more Danmachi and other my things. Thank you, and have a great day.